Everybody needs to know this advice. It is so simple, yet so many players fail to recognize it.
Come on, darling. I see you falling in and out of love.
1 year ago, I was going for the Grandmaster Combat Achievements, and my last task was a sub 65-minute Inferno task. I was given 3 pieces of advice, all of which apply to you. Quick disclaimer, you already know these 3 tips, but you don't understand the importance of them. You master the fundamentals so you can forget them. Tip 1, every time you attack, you should be fully potted and have your offensive prayers activated. Who do you think does more DPS? Full Torva, potted, using prayer, or maxed range gear, not potted, not using prayer? At Shamans, Vasa, Olmhead, Zabak, Akka, Wardens, Maiden, Nilo, Zarpus, all places you might use a blowpipe, the full Torva potted using prayer does more DPS. You see, the truth is, RuneScape is a game of max hits. Accuracy is often less important than increasing max hits, and while Full Masori does give range strength bonus, it doesn't even compare to Rigour and boosting potions. But luckily, you can do both, right? When you're switching between gear and raids, it is more important to get a partial gear switch and activate your offensive prayers than to get a full gear switch and not activate your prayer. A good tip is to put your 4 most important switches first and prioritize these rather than trying to get a full 7 or 8 way and risk missing your offensive prayers. Vasa is a great example of where this is applicable. Here I opt out of clicking my assembler because I know it's not important for my max hit. It also hardly affects my accuracy. Tip 2 will go more in depth about gear switching, but the takeaway here is treat your offensive prayer as part of your gear switch. It is the most important switch other than your weapon. Okay, now let's discuss always being fully potted. Emphasis on fully. I have 2 essential tips for you. When using overloads and smelling salts, your stats are reboosted every 15 seconds. So if you drink a brew at 4 minutes and 55 seconds, your stats will be drained until the next 15-second interval. Having drained stats for 10 seconds isn't a huge issue, but when you're doing this an entire raid, your damage really does start to suffer. And because there's a way to prevent this, it is even less ideal. Practice sipping brews immediately after attacking and when your timer is 1 or 2 seconds above a 15-second interval. Assuming you're using a scythe or a fang, a T-bow or a bofa, a trident or a shadow, this will allow you to heal while keeping damage maximized. Of course, there will be scenarios where you need to spam brews. Sometimes you will need to sip 3 brew doses and a restore. But in general, it is a very bad habit to triple brew and restore every time you heal. Good players don't allow themselves to get into a position where they need to triple brew. If you're at 80 HP and make a mistake that deals 40 damage, then you won't need to spam an entire brew like you would have if you had 15 HP. Get into the habit of sipping brews 1 or 2 seconds before your stats get boosted and your raid times will significantly improve. Okay, what if you're doing Tob? You won't have salts or overloads. There is a technique where you can sip a brew immediately after a 4 or 5 tick weapon and then sip a super combat potion before your next attack. This is extremely useful at Verzik where you are constantly taking chip damage and want to stay at a decent HP in case of a Verzik melee. But you can use this anywhere. Grabbing a twisted potion from Vasa and using this trick at Mutadal is something I often do. The previously mentioned tip is more useful, but if you're working towards Grandmaster achievements or just want to get better, this is a great tool to have. And you're gonna mess this up the first couple times, so don't worry about it. Number 2, your scythe is a 5 tick weapon, not 6. One of the biggest gaps from an average to a good player is the continual missing of ticks. The harder the content you are doing, the harder it will be to avoid missing ticks. If you are killing bandos, you click the boss and it's impossible to miss ticks. But now you're doing Maiden, and you lose a tick trying to dodge blood. You are doing Olm, and spikes appear, which causes you to lose a tick. You're doing Wardens and you're constantly missing ticks running early. You don't even realize it, but you are missing so many ticks throughout a raid, and it drastically slows you down. When I was attempting my sub 65-minute Inferno task, one of the tips I was given was to always be shooting something. Rather than killing a blob and waiting for the minis to appear, kill the blob and shoot another monster while waiting for those minis to appear. My suggestion to you is to record your gameplay, watch it over, and realize how many times your scythe is becoming a 6-tick weapon, or you're trying to dodge waves at Zabak, and your T-bow becomes a 6-tick weapon. Often it will be better to have an inefficient tick rather than missing ticks. When I was at Vasa, I didn't do a full gear switch, so by definition, it was an inefficient T-bow shot, but it would have been more costly to lose a tick and to get my cape switch on. Number 3. Best for last, gotta milk it. You need game knowledge and you gotta learn the mechanics. You can have the 2 previous tips mastered, but if you don't understand how to do specific mechanics or don't know the proper special attack order, you will be heavily limited in raid efficiency. I could make 20 videos on what mechanics you need to learn, so I'm just gonna tell you this. You should be butterflying at Akka. You should be running webs at Verzik. You should be mage skipping at Ulm. You should be red Xing at Baba. You should be scythe walking at Zarpus. I love the fact that mechanics play such a large part of raid efficiency because anybody can learn them and it will immediately improve their raids. You need to be constantly messing up in your raids. It means you are trying to learn new mechanics that will improve your skill. Would you rather do 100 inefficient Verzik kills or mess up your team 3 or 4 times and then have 96 improved Verziks? Always try to run webs. Very rarely will you practicing a new mechanic cause a team wipe. So my suggestion is to pick one thing to work on every single raid. After 4 or 5 raids, maybe you will learn something new. Then pick up a new mechanic you want to learn. Don't overwhelm yourself by saying, in one raid, I want to learn how to skip 30s. I want to learn how to tick eat bloat. And then I want to learn how to 5-tick at Zarpus. Small incremental improvements is the way to go. After 50 raids, you're going to be a whole new player. Okay, so in addition to learning mechanics, you need to gain knowledge.
But you know what I like a lot more than materialistic things? Knowledge.
So what does gain knowledge even mean? If you are running 5-man chambers, is somebody bringing a BGS? And do you know where and how to use this BGS? At what defense level is it better to use a BGS instead of a Warhammer? Should I bring both a BGS and a Warhammer? Okay, what about Nyla Room? Do you know double spawns for your role? Do you know pre-fires? Do you know which bigs to not kill? Did you know that there is a limit of Nylas that can be in the room at one time, and that it changes? These aren't mechanics, but they are often tidbits of knowledge that you need to learn if you want to become a good raider. A lot of knowledge will be gained over time raiding, but there's also a lot of knowledge that you will not pick up on your own. Players have legitimately studied these rooms, so unless you are doing the same, it's gonna go right past you. My call to action for you is to ask questions. Have a curious mind and try to understand rather than just memorize. It will take you a long way in RuneScape, and the game will be much more intuitive to you. I know these tips aren't glamorous, but these are the fundamentals every good raider implements, whether they know it or not. Thanks for watching, and see you later.
Out of love, is it because you're cold and heartless? Or is it all withdrawals? Forgotten how to be